This is,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, so now we're gonna welcome an update by the Empire State Development Corporation. They have been on for a little bit, so it's a general overview of 5 World Trade Center. I hope that they've been able to listen to some of the conversation about 9/11 Museum and the Tunnel to Towers, because my point being for them to understand exactly what the neighborhood looks like for the entire month of September and how lack of access that they will have for the building, for south and west of them, north, south, and west, that they will only occasionally have maybe, actually, they have no access on the east side, it's locked. Never mind. Okay. So, thank you, everybody. I'm not sure, Marion, who's starting the dialogue, whether it's Dara and the development team.
Good evening, Tammy. It's Toby here. I'll be starting the discussion. If you just give me another minute or so, I'll be able to share my presentation with the group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, just confirming that everyone's able to view the screen.
Yes.
Yep.
I will. This over? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Toby Jayasimi, representing Empire State Development and working on the World Trade Center Site 5 project. Thank you for the ability to be with you tonight, to come back before the community board to talk about this development project. Just briefly, wanted to note that I'm joined tonight by Howard Lights, EVP of Real Estate at Empire State Development, joined by Marion Phillips, who's our Senior Vice President of Community Relations. I'm joined by representatives of the development team, Dara McQuillan, Dewana Williams, also joined by representatives of the Port Authority, Justin Lavery, and also Justin Burnback and Mike Lavery, apologies. So we were before you back in May during the Land Use Committee meeting, and we wanted to come back to just speak before the board and continue our public engagement on this project. For those who may not have been part of that discussion back in May or who don't have familiarity with the project, I'll provide just a few quick minutes of project background. And then the way that we've laid out our presentation today to ensure the most efficient use of our time would be to also provide some responses to a lot of the questions and comments that we've gotten from community board members, from community board leadership, and also from the public as it relates to this project. So for those who may not be familiar, World Trade Center Site 5 is at the site of the former Deutsche Bank building. The site was acquired and remediated and cleared by Lower Manhattan Development Corporation using HUD block grant funds. In 2004, the site, as part of the World Trade Center General Project Plan, was approved for commercial and or hotel use. A few years later, there was an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding between the Port Authority and LMDC, under which the port exchanged the property that it's owned at the center of the campus to allow for the museum and the memorial that we were just discussing earlier. And in exchange, the Port Authority would receive Site 5. A few years after that, in 2019, there was another MOU between LMDC and the port to jointly issue an RFP for Site 5 that either permitted for commercial development, which is as of right under the approved project plan, or for mixed use development, which would require a modification to the World Trade Center General Project Plan. The RFP was released in 2019, and what follows next is the highest scoring proposal, which would allow for a mixed income residential tower with office use, a community facility, an amenity space, and also retail space as well. As noted, this current plan would require for there to be a modification to the general project plan. We'll talk about that and what the public approvals process will look like shortly. Again, the conditional designation for the development team was approved back in February, and over the last few months, we've spent a lot of time working through the program and design of this, and also talking about what it is that we'd like to hear from the community and hear from key stakeholders. There were a number of questions that were submitted to us, both in advance of and as part of the May meeting that we participated in with the community board. And there's also been a number of questions and issues that have come up over the last few months related to the project that we'd like to now take some time to address. Okay, so one of the questions that has come up, again, as I referenced this idea of there being the need for a modification to the general project plan to allow for there to be residential use, would be what the public approvals and what the public review process for this project will look like. Please note that the public approvals process would commence in the fall, so in just a matter of weeks or months, and it would require actions by the Board of Directors of the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, Empire State Development, and also the Port Authority. During the public review process, there'll be public hearings. There'll be an opportunity also for comment on the draft environmental assessment that's being established for the project, the proposed modifications to the general project plan, and also the terms of the ground lease to the developer. Just to clarify the roles of the public sponsors, LMDC, per the swap that was referenced earlier, would offer the site to the port. ESD would serve as landlord, and we'd be serving also in the capacity of being able to ensure that all of the obligations in the lease are being met as landlord for the site. There was a number of questions that came up about what would be any possible impacts as a result of the project to the Lower Manhattan community. The environmental assessment will be quite detailed and will analyze any potential impacts from the project that differ from what was previously approved for Tower 5. So there was an environmental assessment, environmental review that's been previously done as part of the general project plan. And now what this EA would do is also take a closer look at what, if any, potential impacts there would be with the residential use. That includes questions that we've received as it relates to migratory birds, as it relates to traffic impacts, shadow studies, et cetera. We've also gotten some questions as it relates to the procurement process of this, because this is an RFP, and also as it relates to the financial terms of this deal. You know, what does it mean to make the port whole? What are the rent payments? How much is this project valued? Please note that, again, just because of the way that the deal is structured and the project is structured, we're still in an open procurement until final approvals and negotiations are ongoing. So certain financial terms and certain aspects of this deal will remain confidential until that time. Moving ahead, we've also gotten some questions as it relates to the public benefits of this, specifically as it relates to the affordable housing, as it relates to the community facility. The project right now will deliver 25% of all residential units in the project as permanently affordable. That will be at an average of 50% of area median income, which for New York City, that's approximately $42,000 for an individual and $60,000 for a family of four. We've got some questions as it relates to how it is that the affordable housing units will be dispersed throughout the building, whether or not they'll be 4 floors or 4 doors. But please note that these units will be dispersed in the building. They won't be concentrated, and there'll also be a shared entry with the market rate units as well. The governance of the permanently affordable housing units will be under New York State Homes and Community Renewal. There will be a regulatory agreement in place that will lay out the permanent affordability obligations for the project. And as was noted earlier in the slide, as it relates to the community facility that is planned for the project, the development team is currently in discussions with potential operators. And so far, the idea and the response that we've been thinking through with the development team is ensuring that it will be a multi-use facility with a number of different purposes that will be applicable to a wide range of constituencies in the community. Moving on, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dawana Williams, to speak some more about the affordable housing aspect of the project and to be responsive to some of the questions that we've gotten related to affordability.
Unmute.
Can they unmute themselves?
Yeah,
You want to,
we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Thank
you.
you, Toby, and thank you, Community Board 1, for having us. As she mentioned, I'm Dawana Williams, Managing Principal of Dabar Development Partners. Along with Omni New York, we are the affordable housing partners on the project, and with Silverstein and Brookville form the development team. As was mentioned, the project program is contemplated to include 25% affordable, which means that there will be 300 plus permanently affordable units. There will be 300 plus affordable units, ranging from 30% to 80% of AMI. I'd like to note that part of the way that we arrived at this number is based on requests that we've heard from Community Board 1 for more deeply affordable units and for permanently affordable units. We also took some time to look at the number of units created over the past 20 years, particularly from the year 2000 through 2017. We note that 20,000 plus units of new construction and renovated units were created. Approximately 5% of those are affordable, which amounts to approximately 1,096 units. World Trade Center 5 will increase the number of affordable units in Community Board 1 by approximately 30% with this 300 plus units. As you will see from this graph on the right, from 2000 through 2018, approximately 61 units per year were created. With this development, we would increase that number by a factor of 5 times with the 300 plus units. Also, as was mentioned, the average AMI is 50%, which is approximately $775 for a studio apartment, or with the range of 30% to 80% of AMI for an individual, that would be approximately $25,000 to $66,000 in income. Currently, and at this time, there's no subsidy contemplated. I will end here, and I look forward to answering your questions, and I'll turn it over to Toby.
Thank you, Duana. Continuing
Toby,
on.
Toby, are we doing Q&A at the very end or per section?
I think it would be most efficient if we did it at the very end to allow for us to run through the presentation and make the best use of our time, but I defer to you as chair.
I'm fine. Keep going.
Thank you.
Delighted.
It also
you.
gives me a time to get a sip of water after the presentation. Okay, so moving on to quality of life questions and concerns that have also been raised as it relates to, we've continued our public engagement over the last few months, and we hope to continue so through the public approvals process. But there have been some concerns that have been raised about how will quality of life concerns be addressed during the construction period. Please note that we plan on having ongoing public quality of life meetings with both the public sponsors and also the development team to discuss and hear community concerns. That's our practice for other projects across the city, and we'll continue that for World Trade Center Site 5 as well. There'll also be notices of construction activity that will be shared and regular status updates to inform the community about the construction activity at the site. One key thing that's come up and was described vividly by community board members and also members of the public was this concern with seeing large piles of trash on the sidewalk, pickup days, and what that would mean really for cleanliness and neighborhood conditions. So the development team has committed to storing all garbage and will have the trash privately carted, so everything is stored within the footprint of the tower and will have no public disturbance. Another key issue that's come up is related to traffic. I know the board was talking about this earlier as it related to the memorial and the museum and the planned events for September 11th. And so we've heard you about those concerns. The development team is working on a traffic study to look at the possibility of adding a left turn off of the West Side Highway onto Albany Street. This would address some of the concerns that we've had. And it's also in correlation with ongoing discussions that the public sponsors are engaging both state and city DOT on to be able to address the current traffic conditions around the project.
And Liberty Street.
And Liberty Street, I believe that was Pat that I heard. Another question that's come up, again, noting the MOU that was established for the swap of the museum and memorial sites for World Trade Center Site 5. There were some concerns as it relates to the use restrictions. And so please note that the site for both the museum and the memorial are currently owned by the Port Authority, and they will be continuing to be leased by the Port Authority through a long-term lease that is being held in escrow pending the completion of the Site 5 transaction. Prior to the closing of the Site 5 transaction, LMDC and Port Authority will sign and record a declaration of restrictions, and this will restrict use of the museum and memorial premises according to its current use. Right, so what this does is with the recording of the Declaration of Restrictions, it will continue to apply even if the memorial and museum site is transferred in the future. I'll note also that New York City zoning resolution concept of there being transferable development rights or air rights does not apply to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum site because the site isn't subject to city zoning. It's under the World Trade Center general project plan, and the uses and the restrictions on the site are listed within the GPP. So I know that that was a key concern that had come up from the community as it relates to the importance of both the museum and the memorial. So kind of doing some place making and helping us understand where we are, as I noted back in February, this conditional designation approval of the development team for having the highest scoring proposal in response to the RFP. You know, between then and now, we've been continuing our discussions as it relates to public engagement. The development team and the public sponsors are working through key aspects of moving this project ahead. In the fall, we expect both the LMDC and ESD boards to take action on the drafts to the modifications to the general project plan, items related to the environmental assessment, which is again being governed by the acronyms that you see there are SECRA and NEPA, which represents both state and federal regulations for environmental review. There'll also be a 30-day public comment period in addition to there being a public hearing, and that will allow for folks to be able to make comments on both the MGPP, the environmental assessment, and also the disposition of Site 5. Following those actions, of course, the public comment period continues. There'll be an opportunity for the public sponsored boards to consider all public comments and also finalize the modifications to the general project plan. You know, doing a little bit of time travel and working through the first quarter and winter 2022, there will then be additional action that's taken as it relates to finalizing the modifications to the general project plan and also the actions needed to ensure the transfer of the site to ESD and then the long-term lease to the developer. Transitioning now, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dabar Quillen, to speak to some of the key items that we've heard from the community board, from the members of the public, and just to note where we are. So Dara.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you also to the committee members for having us this evening. I think many of you know me. I'm the head of public relations for the Silverstein organization. I've been here for 18 years. My first project was the building of 7 World Trade Center. And I also live on Liberty Street, so my whole life is within a 5-block radius of this building. These are some of the issues and concerns that we've heard from members of the community over the last couple of months, including, you know, members of the executive committee. Many of them, as I'm sure you can imagine, focus on the street level experience around the building. Most of us get to experience these buildings as residents and by walking or driving around them. So a lot of focus and a lot of feedback has been on the design of the base of the building, where the entrances are, where the loading dock is, and also, you know, and this is something that Tammy's raised a number of times, how the building fits into the context, not of the World Trade Center, so which is to the north, but the other buildings in Greenwich South and what we all know as Little Syria. So these are things that we are considering from a design and architecture perspective. As Tammy mentioned, there's a lot of importance being paid to the loading docks, garbage pickup and recycling, which will happen within the footprint of the building and not on the sidewalks. And also with such a large residential building, how we manage the residents who move in and move out on a regular basis. We're also looking at bike messenger drop-off and the community space within the building, how you access it at street level, but also how you access it from Liberty Park, and what that community space will be used for. We're also very, very sensitive to managing the physical construction of the building. And I know this is something that Pat Fuller in particular focuses on. She lives a block away. So we will be setting up a plan similar in many respects to the LMCCC, which we all worked with for a number of years. And I think they did a pretty good job in helping navigate the construction of many projects around downtown. But our focus will be on, reducing noise, no air pollution, not blocking the streets and all of that. And most importantly, maintaining open lines of communication 24/7 and relying on some of our neighbors, including myself, to let us know if things aren't going according to plan. This building is being designed and will be built to the very highest levels of sustainability, energy efficiency, and resiliency. That's important to our organization. I think many of you know that we designed and built all of our buildings at the World Trade Center to the LEED Gold level, and we're going to be looking for, sustainability goals for this building. And of course, we've gotten a lot of feedback from many members of the community about, how we can use this process, if possible, to open up Greenwich Street, potentially open up Liberty Street, and reconnect the World Trade Center campus to the rest of downtown. So these are all things that we are looking at and working with our public sector partners and law enforcement. And we hope to be able to come back to you soon, for sure the Land Use Committee in a month, with updates to our design of the building based on a lot of this feedback. And then at some point, we would like to come back to you and let you know where we stand.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'll note that we come to the end of our presentation and the slide deck. I've listed contact information for both myself and also my colleague Francisco Polanco, who's assisting with the community affairs outreach efforts on this project. So if folks would like to follow up with us, please feel free to utilize the contact information that's on the screen. Tammy, I'll kick it back over to you to help facilitate with the questions that would come in from board members and also members of the public.
So we're going to go around the table. We'll do executive committee, board members, public members, and members in the public. Remember, we do have board members who are online, as well as executive board members online based on our new COVID protocol. So we'll start with the executive committee in the room. If anybody has questions. Tricia, we'll go Tricia first. Justine, Betty, Richard, Alice. Tricia.
Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. I'm really confused about affordable. So I would like to take this opportunity to become less confused about affordable housing, because I see, to me, I always thought it was done on a sliding scale and done by a percentage of income. And to me, that would make the most sense, because to have these almost capricious windows of income and then assign randomly costs of apartments to them, to me, it can be very restricting to people. I know this because, I'm youth and ed. We have people that have to go for these bridge loans when their kids have to go into special ed schools. And no one qualifies for them if they make over $60,000, but the tuition is $72,000. And so when I look at it, there's this huge group of people that are not going to get assistance. And I think if we go to do affordable housing again in this neighborhood, I would want to make sure we hit the nail on the head this time, because we've left so many people behind based on these windows that they come up with in a room where nobody else is in these discussions, and deeply understand our demographic, where our challenges are in Lower Manhattan in terms of affordable housing. That would also be super helpful. Some of our families are living in one bedrooms that have 3 children. And I'd love to have those kind of things considered as well. And we're missing, again, we're just missing large groups of people with the way this has been laid out in the past, and I would like to better understand it.
Sure. So I'll invite Joanna to respond to that and to kind of speak to when we reference the income bands, what AMIs mean, how that's set on a federal level, and also to just give some context as to how the rents are established so that you are, better informed as to what it is that we've established and we've shared so far in the presentation related to affordable housing. Joanna?
Sure. So I think this is a conversation. We'll need to take time for a deeper conversation. I appreciate the question. But so that you know, these bans that we discussed are set by the federal government, and we follow their guidelines for what's called average or area medium income. That is set by the federal government and by HUD, the Department of Housing and Housing Renewal. When HUD sets a guideline for area medium income annually, it changes based on the number of residents that are located within a certain metropolitan area. We can talk further about it, but the bans are set not by the developer, but by, as a short answer, but by the federal government, and the state follows the guideline.
So are you providing, someone just sent this to me, Justine just sent it to me.
We can provide information to you, the guidelines and the income bands and the New York City's.
Let's see them. Are we addressing all of these income bands in the project? Okay.
No.
So that's what I'd like to know, because that to me is the problem. These income bands that Justine just sent me actually make more sense than anything I've seen. But
Which income bands are you referencing?
I'm looking at, family size of 1 through 8, going from 30 to 165% AMI. Certainly at 165% for a family of 8 would be very unlikely here. But I would look at, families.
New York City number.
Yeah, families of 5 up to say 100%.
So
AMI or really that whole big.
We can.
So Duana, they're looking at the HPD New York City 2021 AMI chart and the rubric.
Right. Yeah. So what you're looking at is the rubric and the, what Duana referenced, which is set by the federal government. And we're noting that this project is going to have a range from 30% of AMI to 80% of AMI, and that the city specifically selected there be 50% of average AMI for the project based on a needs analysis for the area. So these numbers weren't, put together arbitrarily. It's reflective of, the ability.
Toby, can you send us the New York City needs analysis that you are referencing so we can understand?
Sure.
Because there's no point in arguing it until we've seen it. So,
Right, but I wanted to clarify again that, I think the question was how it is that the income bands were selected. Those are reflective of what is established by the federal government.
okay, thank you. Who was next? Justine?
Thank you. Toby, thank you. Dewan, am I saying it right? Dewan? Dewana, excuse me. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I guess I understand the AMI. I understand what you guys are focused on. And my question and my concerns have been all along that this building at 5 World Trade Center is an amazing opportunity for the city and the state to get this right and try to address affordability in Manhattan and all of the city. And you're not there. You're not there at all. I hear the numbers. I'd like to see what report it is that Tammy's asked for. That makes sense. But what I will tell you is that we believe that it needs to be 100% affordable, and that those bands of affordability need to be not just we need to have, what you put in are extremely low income, very low income, and low income. Yes, there's a huge need for that. No question asked about that. But we also have a need for moderate and middle income homes here. And I think that the 30% or 25% that you put forth for the low income is wonderful. Now we need to have the moderate and middle income people put in as well. And with 100% affordability, you all could do that. And I know there's going to be a lot of answers back, and you can answer me back, but my answer to you is that is what's needed. all of that homes are needed.
We,
And
we hear you, and thank you for that comment.
Okay,
Just to
wow,
Justine, do you have any other
I do
questions?
not. I'm very disappointed in your
I'm gonna
response.
hold.
You're gonna hold? Unfortunately, you gotta wait. I think Betty was next and then Richard.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit to the environmental aspect. Can you hear me?
No, I cannot hear.
Apologies, I can barely hear you.
Betty,
Betty,
can you
can-
come closer to the table, please?
Lucy,
Lucy, can you move a little bit to the left or right?
Yeah, that's the perfect spot.
That's perfect, Betty. Thank you.
Yes, I'm changing more to an environmental look at the building. And I noticed that you said that your goal is to build to the LEED gold standard. Now you're getting into where it's a little bit confusing to me, and so I'm hoping to actually learn something from it. My building is a gold LEED standard building, but I know that the city is using a rating system, and they're going and rating individual buildings. We have no idea what cost there's going to be to fixing the low scores that are coming out. But I can tell you that my building got a 30 out of 100. 30. So by saying gold leads and the city going in a different direction with building standards, it'd be very helpful. Can you give me any guidance on how you would meet the city's standards for energy consumption? Because that's where the city's trying to go.
Thank you for that question. It's critically important and is reflective of a lot of the feedback that we've gotten about sustainability for the development. As Dara mentioned earlier, the development team continues to look at and work through how it is that they can best be in compliance, not just with having the LEED certification that was referenced, but also being responsive to both local law and also federal regulations and looking at ensuring the higher standard of sustainability. So I think as they make progress on the programming and design for the building, they can come back with a more substantive response to your question and we can talk through the specifics. But we hear you and thank you for that comment.
So would we be able to expect a response when you come to land use in September to Betty's question that is very targeted to understand whose standards you're looking at and whether you'll meet the city's goals and guidelines? Dara?
I think we can definitely come to you with more details on what we're targeting. I'm not sure we're at the stage of design yet where we know exactly how this is going to pan out, but we can let you know how we're going to be in compliance with the city and where we would like to be. Would that work?
That's definitely an improvement. Yes, thank you. Did you have a?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on the environmental. Thanks so much, Betty, for bringing that up. I think as acute as the affordability needs are in the city, as are the need for reducing our carbon footprint. And it is opportunities like the one you present yourself with in this very impactful immense building to do it right. And it isn't just meeting a standard, it's getting way beyond the standard at this point, as we all know. And so I think it should be alongside affordability on the top of your list as to how that's going to take place. So we have an environmental protection committee at this community board, and I'm very much hopeful that you'll also make an appearance when the time comes to really talk these things out in terms of all different kinds of possible ways to make this building really be innovative and important in terms of the reduction of the carbon footprint. And I'll leave it at that. I just had one question to ask, who is on the development team as the designers at this point?
Sure, thank you for that. That's something that we shared at our earlier presentation and apologizing for neglecting to emphasize that now. So the development team that was conditionally designated for World Trade Center Site 5 is a joint venture partnership with Silverstein Properties, Brookfield Properties, Dabar Development, and also Omni New York. So those four entities are taking the lead on the development of World Trade Center Site 5. Dara, I don't know if you want to speak to any additional specifics as it relates to the design team, but that's the development team for Site 5.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
asking about the design. I'm
team.
asking about the architects, the urban planners, and the landscape architects specifically, who you're working with. I'm just curious. It would be nice to know how, who the team is, the design team, who will be working on these very issues.
So the architect is Cone Peterson Fox. And they are the ones who are designing the building. And at some point, we would like to have the architect come in and make a presentation to you. And I think we'd be happy to, present to any of the community board committees and, let you know where we stand, particularly with respect to environmental and sustainability and energy efficiency. And we can, fill you in on who the other members of the design and, the design team are over the next coming weeks and months.
Thank you.
That's great. Richard, Pat, do you have anything? I think Richard's next. Keep going.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the presentation. As you can see, the interests that the community board has. Affordability, sustainability, and of course, the quality of life in the community. I want to go back for a moment to the affordability question. We, in this presentation and in other discussions in the TAC, as I know, there have been issues around how we can drive affordability to a much higher level, of course, with the hopeful goal of 100%, but certainly an improvement of where we are now, over 25%. And certainly one of the issues has been money. And what at least I'd like to know here, and what I don't see in the presentation, is any place in the timeline where there's an opportunity to discuss and move this project plan in a different direction based upon what the community is seeking and what many of our now elected officials are seeking and may be able to help solve. So in all of these timeline presentations, I don't see any place for that. In all of the presentations, I don't see any place for that discussion to take place. And I'd like to know where and when we can do that.
Thank you, Richard. That's an
Toby, before you address the timeline, I'd like to respond to the 100% affordability question first. We have seriously looked at the question because it has been presented regarding 100% affordability. The cost of construction, unfortunately, far exceeds the amount of state allocation for bond authority. Typically, affordable housing is financed through tax-exempt bonds, and the federal government allocates a certain amount to each state based on the number of residents in a state. There's only a certain amount allocated to New York State. The amount allocated to New York State typically covers dozens and dozens of projects each year. To concentrate all of the annual allocation of New York State tax-exempt bond authority into one project really is not feasible. Not only would it exhaust the entire allocation, but it would be tantamount to eliminating all affordable housing that is in the pipeline for that allocation. We're talking thousands and thousands of units, and the allocation would be concentrated into one development. So that's why it is not feasible for this development. And Toby.
So staying with that, and your level of expertise is beyond mine for sure. Congressman Nadler wrote a letter into the Empire State Development Corporation suggesting that Section 8 funding could be a source to at least drive the percentage higher. And I don't know what your comments, how your comments relate to that.
I can address that as well. Thank you, Richard, for the question. I did just see the letter a few days ago, and apparently Congressman Nadler's office is not aware, but there is a waiting list of approximately 150,000 people for Section 8 vouchers and families. It's been over 10 years since the city has stopped taking names for Section 8. So the funding is extremely limited for Section 8, and it would be entirely unprecedented for there to be vouchers available for this project.
And I'll add to Dewana's response, Richard, that ESD has been in receipt of the congressman's letter, and we've also had additional follow-up conversations with his staff just to clarify some of the points that Dawana has made and to look at other opportunities in which the congressman, through the federal government, can be supportive of development in Lower Manhattan.
So if
Okay.
there are,
Richard, I have 2 other people online, and we have 4 other topics.
Sorry, Tammy, it's Holly. Can I just do a quick follow-up on the Nadler letter?
Sure, Holly, we'd love to have your camera on so people know who you are as well.
My problem is here in the Bronx, we don't have very good internet when it's hot. So if I turn it on, I will lose my internet. So that is why I apologize. That's why I don't have my camera on. But I just wanted to quickly follow up with on the Nadler letter. They had referenced a new allocation of Section 8 in that letter. There's, as part of the recovery plan, there were, I want to say it's 70,000 new vouchers, emergency homeless vouchers that were issued by Congress. And that was what the staff was referring to. We sort of tracked that down. Those are for currently homeless or people in immediate need of a voucher in order not to be homeless. And they cannot be project based. So we're in an ongoing dialogue with the congressman's office about that. But, we, as I committed to you, Tammy, we are looking at all the federal resources that are out there. That particular new source of vouchers just wouldn't be relevant here.
Okay.
can I just make one last, can I just request that this topic and this conversation be included in the presentations that we have going forward, and that there be some opportunity for this discussion. It's obviously ongoing with you and Congressman Nadler, his office. So we'd like to be a part of that.
And I do think, Holly, you've heard from us before that we understand that it's sort of not the conversation that we're looking for, that, we understand the state doesn't have all the funds for a project of this magnitude, but there's no saying that private-public partnership could not divide the building to provide and balance a maximum possibility for affordability. That is something that the state and city does very well. So saying that it's all or nothing from the state doesn't seem to be the dialogue that we understand. I have 2 board members online on our executive committee who are looking to ask a question. Susan Cole, you're first, and then Vicky, you're second. Susan, go.
Susan, okay.
I'm not sure that there can't be something worked out with a portion of the units being project-based rather than vouchers. I will say no, it's truly possible, and it can go up to 80% of median as well. And that is feasible. That's number one. And number two, my question to all of you is, are you going to allow community preference for people who have been displaced here or are in difficult circumstances?
So I guess
And then it has to be citywide, but there is, it has been done in the past. There could be 50% community preference, 30% community preference, but is somebody thinking about that?
We thank you for the question, and we are thinking about it and would love to provide a community preference. I would add that there is a long-standing policy towards community preference in New York City and New York State. However, there is long-standing litigation that is ongoing presently regarding community preference. So we will do what we legally permitted to do. In the past, New York City has offered 50% community preference, and we think that that would be great. We know that there is also a desire for 9/11 survivors to participate in a community preference, which we would also consider, but we do have to follow what the law tells us. So we're waiting to see how the litigation resolves itself, and we'll follow what's legally permissible.
Thank you.
About litigation. Okay, Vicky, Susan, you good? So Vicky, you're next.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to just make comments about the possibility what this project can do for Lower Manhattan and writing on Susan's question for community preference. So I've been doing some research in the last couple of months, and for Lower Manhattan, that's what we're interested in here. I will tell you that the prices have unanimously gone up to the point that very few people can afford to live here, and especially single women, for example. Did you know that a studio is now regularly between 3,300 and 4,000, and one bedrooms for a reasonable adult is 4,000 and up to 6. So these prices are pricing out not families and poor, lower income families, it's pricing out everyone. And here's an opportunity for you to build. Throw the word out, affordable. Affordable as defined by the government, especially the federal government, is not helping us in this neighborhood at all. I was going to say that, what we really need, a reasonable market rate. Okay, a studio should not be 3,300 to 4,300. That is for 500 square feet. So why can't we get you to promise us? I know you're in the business of making a profit, but what this community needs is reasonable market rate. Otherwise, I don't understand where we're supposed to live. And the communities that we're creating, if a single professional woman who does not work for Goldman Sachs cannot make 40% the median income, what are you supposed to do? And what we're getting downtown now consistently are studios and one bedrooms that are subdivided with 4 or 5 people living in it. I mean,
Vicky,
yes.
what is the question? What's the question?
Why can't I just told you what the question is. Why can't this be built so that it's reasonably priced, so that the professional community that lives in Lower Manhattan, and that includes a delivery guy to, anything else, can afford a reasonably priced apartment in Lower Manhattan? Why can't we look at it that way? Why are we parsing it? And once again, throwing the word affordable, which shouldn't be based on federal levels, because we're in New York. Maybe a family, of 4 can live in for 60,000. Where are you going to find one in New York City? And if they do come to live down here, one orange at Key Food is $1.49. What are you going to do? 1 kid a day? So what we need is for you to start giving us reasonably priced housing in this new tower. Is that possible? Can we, of course it's possible.
Thank you for your question. We are certainly taking all of
Anna question.
Yes, thank you for the statement as well. Your sentiment is understandable. I will note that we are balancing many requests. There are some, we've heard from some constituents that are interested in deeper affordability. Others we've heard tonight that are interested in middle and moderate income. We're taking all of these statements and all of these concerns and considering them. I will note though that in order to some of the units at the lower end of the scale, then they have to be balanced at another price range so that we can meet our operating expenditures. We will take it all into consideration.
Okay, so keep in mind, I have 4 other topics and we have other people, so.
I just want to make a quick, I don't want to deny
Carry
anything or belabor any of the points. I just want to correct something for the record.
Sure.
We have, at this point, not only the Congressman Nadler letter, but, and resounding support from him, but the same from Carolyn Maloney, to give us a letter, which she's fully on board.
So is
Congressman Maloney. Yeah, right. Moving on to the state level, we have Eileen going all over. She's 100%, 1,000% in support.
So is Senator Kavanaugh.
Brian Kavanaugh is signed on to this. The nominee for borough president is tremendously signed on to this.
So is the nominee for our city council.
City council nominee is fully. So we have from the city level, obviously, to the federal government covered and growing. more people
Correct.
continue to sign
Correct.
on. If we need to find money, I think there's a way to potentially find money that we don't have to keep shutting it out. But
And
just
then-
wants to be clear about that.
Exactly, and I think for Toby to hear that from a multitude of people versus just those of us who are on the CAC, I mean, this is our chance to show what transformative housing can do to desegregate our schools, to provide equity and access, to reduce the congestion that we have. I mean, think about the thousands of people who wouldn't need to commute or drive or anything. I mean, just it is a bellwether for potential. And I do have an issue with their slides of how many affordable housing we have, simply because they didn't include any 421A, none of the 421A, G, alphabet, whatever.
Much of it is expiring. But
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm gonna go Jill, and then Lucian has some questions. I need everybody to keep it tight
I'll go very quickly.
and don't repeat anything that's already been
And I
said.
will not repeat. Okay.
Thank you.
So my question is, you talk about public engagement in your slides. The CAC is not public engagement. So the only public engagement I have seen is, so far, this is the second meeting I've seen that you come to the community. So when you talk about what the public says, I think you're wrong, because the one thing I think everyone in this community will tell you is we do not need an 80-story luxury tower.
Yes.
We need affordable housing. Thank you.
Here, here, yes.
Thank you for that comment, and we hear you. And we're committed to continuing to come back to the community board to provide status updates on where we are on the project.
That's
Yeah,
not,
that's
the
not
question
what it
wasn't specifically about community engagement, and when you list on your slides, public engagement, that wasn't reflective of public engagement. The CAC is not public.
So unless Toby, you're willing to consider opening the CAC to recording and putting it out publicly for viewing, that's kind of where they're talking about public engagement.
Right. Otherwise, you cannot call it public engagement.
Public
Understood.
engagement is only the part that you explain and show while you're in this room with the community board. All right, I'm gonna go to Matt, and then Lucian's gonna follow and close questions.
I'll try to go quickly, but a couple of points. First, on the CAC, why are those meetings not open to the public and why are they not recorded?
Here.
So community advisory committees are something that are established for different projects at ESD. CAC serve in an advisory capacity to ESD, and our meetings don't take the same structure as, say, a community board meeting or a district cabinet meeting. They don't offer the same structure as the meetings that you may be referencing, the community board meetings. But again, our commitment is to continue our engagement to the local community via the community board meetings. If there are other specific
So I'm going to stop you there. Please wait a minute.
If
Clearly, they are a different structure because public meetings are open and yours are not. I didn't ask you whether they're different. Yes, they are. The question is, why are they not open to the public?
I understand that, and that's why I was clarifying, and that the role of the CAC is to serve in an advisory committee capacity to the project team. And so the structure of the CAC isn't established to be public. It's established for there to be a conversation with some key stakeholders related to the project. And then we continue our public engagement through presentations to the community board, engagement with the electeds, and also with other key members of the community that will have concerns related to the project.
Engagement, and now you're saying it's not.
It's not.
What they're saying is the CAC is not, it should not be included under what the ESD considers community engagement because it is not a publicly engageable.
Behind closed doors. There's nothing public about it.
Understood. We'll clarify that.
I'm not asking for clarification. I'm asking you to change it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. I don't think this is.
Just your point, that is a dismissive brush off.
I apologize. I'm not looking to dismiss you or to diminish the level of statement that you've just made. It's just that I've offered you a response, and I can't commit at this moment to whether or not ESD will change its practice of making its CAC meetings public, because it's not.
You won't. Maybe it'd just be better to say, no, we're not going to change it.
Thank you for that comment. I'm not in a position to be able to give you that response at this time, but I've noted your comment. I've noted the community's request to have the CAC meetings be public. Our commitment is to continue public engagement by coming to the community board.
If the community and elected officials unanimously oppose this thing, will you agree not to build it?
Again, thank you for that comment, but Toby Jaisimi is in no position to be able to make that definitive statement at this time, but I hear you, and it's something that I'll reflect back to the team.
The whole rationale here is that you've got to build this and make a lot of money so that the Port Authority gets paid back. You and Port Authority and the LMDC are all arms of government. Why is one arm of government paying another arm of government back instead of serving the public interest?
The Port Authority, PSD, and LMDC are public government-facing entities, and so I understand your concern about why it is that the port needs to be made whole, but as referenced as it relates to the transfer of the sites for the museum and memorial sites, this allows for an opportunity for the port to really be made whole for a significant amount of investment that was done to be able to allow for the World Trade Center campus to be what it is now. The port has had decades-long commitment to the work on the World Trade Center campus, and its mission and its focus is also geared to a public-facing capacity. So this isn't a transaction between one private entity and another private entity in a profit-making scheme, but an opportunity to continue to support the port's mission and its public-facing role as well.
The fact that it is not a transaction between one private entity and another is exactly why it should be possible for government agencies to represent and further the public's interest rather than behaving like private profit-making entities and holding meetings behind closed doors. And
we hear you on that, and we understand your concerns.
Okay, a question. Will you commit to, even on the market rate units, capping rents with rent stabilization so that when somebody moves in at rent X, you won't increase it year over year more than the New York City rent guide? There's been tremendous success in creating retroactive affordability. For example, at Gateway, although that program has now been gutted, for decades that provided affordability. Can you give even market rate tenants stabilization caps on rent increases?
Thank you for that question, and I apologize if my response comes off as being dismissive. I'm not, but that is just too far large of a question and response for me to be able to give you right now. But I've noted your comment, I've noted the request, and we'll be sure to circle back on it.
There was recently a staff rebellion at the Port Authority once Cuomo announced his resignation, where dozens of senior folks sent an email and letter to Tom Cotton saying that Cuomo leaned on them to do all sorts of things to benefit politically connected contributors that the Port Authority never should have done. They didn't name Brookfield specifically, but you might as well have filled in the name. Will Brookfield be forced out of this project now that Cuomo is gone?
Again, I've noted your question, noted your comment.
Matt, she's not, yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Lucian, take us home and close us out.
Hi, Toby. I'm Lucian. I'm the district manager of CB1. I just have two questions about the affordability. The first question is, should the situation change in Washington, D.C. and the federal government successfully pass the budget, which if it resembles the budget resolution that passed and includes an enormous amount of money for the construction of affordable housing, do you think that the potential timeline for that budget could be, the subsidy that comes from that could be used to increase the amount of affordability at the current AMI bands that have been proposed, or if the AMI bands are changed, even create a almost completely affordable project, should there be an enormous amount of subsidy unlocked with action in Congress?
Yes, no, I hear you on that, and that's actually a good question. As Holly and both Dawana have referenced, we continue our dialogue with Congressman Nadler's office and also with federal representatives as it relates to the public financing that would be available and public subsidy that would be available for this project. And so, should there be an opportunity where we can address the backlog of the hundreds of thousands of Section 8 voucher requests, if there's an opportunity to support this project and the thousands of other affordable housing units that we hope to be in the pipeline across the city and the state, then we'll welcome the ability to be able to have that discussion.
Thank you, Toby. And my last question about affordability is the AMI bans. I know this project is supposed to resemble to some degree the MIH program. For MIH, typically at the end of ULURP, the council member gets to kind of have a say in what the affordability bans are that are chosen depending on what the needs are in the district. And this is kind of front-ended where the mayor's office provided a justification for what income bans were needed in this district. Through your conversations with the CAC and with the community board, what degree of, how much can you tinker with the current AMI bans on there? And if higher AMI bans for like workforce housing would allow for a greater number of units to be permanently made income restricted?
I'll take the question. We will take your questions and your suggestions under advisement. I can't say now whether or not there will be any flexibility or not, but we're certainly taking it under advisement. You're correct that under ULUPs, usually the council member makes a recommendation. This is a state process, and we are coming to the community board to receive your feedback, and we are taking it under advisement.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Paul Goldstein has the last word. Paul?
Okay, I'll be very quick. You just mentioned the state. This is a state project, Port Authority, LMDC. The governor has historically played a major role in the rebuilding of Lower Manhattan, including the World Trade Center. We're obviously getting a new governor coming on board within the next few days. What role will she play in reviewing this project? And I'm sure she's going to have her staff that would probably have some interest in all this. So are you going to bring this to her before her? And is she going to be another player in this?
Paul, thank you for that question. The public approvals process and public review process for the project is established as it is, with actions going before the ESD board, LMDC board, and also the Port Authority board. Of course, with ESD serving as the economic development arm for state government, there is direct relationship there with the governor's office. We'll be sure to brief the executive chamber on the status of the project and also to be reflective of the community's concerns and the general comments that have been made as it relates to the status of the project as well.
How many people out there are there?
Thank you.
4.
Should give them 1 minute each or something.
At least let them say that.
The problem that we have is we have a Battery Park City Authority
I know.
presentation. It's 8:34. We've gone through a lot of questions. I've asked the public to, Lucian just sent a note through to the public saying, please forward your questions and things like that.
This is so that the ESD, thank you, know that there are people who are on the line waiting who we've talked too much and they have not had a chance to speak up. So I just want them to be aware that it's not just us in the room who are speaking along these lines.
Yeah.
It is the community.
There's a list of people online who are looking for questions to be answered as well. It's just we have a large agenda, and I do think that goes back to the public engagement. And if you were here more often and could have done more topical dialogues since the first announcement, then we wouldn't be in this position, which is not great for it's not really fair for the public. September, we would like you to come to land use. My only concern, and I'm putting it out there, is please explain, Toby, how many board meetings for approvals will be done prior to, I believe our land use meeting is near the end of the month. So I believe that you'll be voting with the Port Authority, correct, early in the month?
No, there are currently no board action slated for the beginning of September. And so depending on the timing of the date for the land use committee meeting, we should be able to come before you well ahead of time.
Could you please elaborate again when the next organizational meetings are that will take this up for approvals?
Right, so the board actions that I'd noted in the timeline were reflective of the LMDC, ESD, and Port Authority boards. Currently, the ESD Board of Directors meeting is scheduled for September 14th, but World Trade Center Site 5 is not on the agenda for that board meeting. The LMDC board meeting has not been scheduled yet, and we don't anticipate for it to happen, if it is scheduled to happen within the first 2 or 3 weeks of September. And as it relates to the Port Authority Board, I believe that the board has a standing schedule for their board meetings, and it's yet to be determined which items would be on that agenda as well. So Tammy, to your point, once we have a better understanding of the schedule for September and the community boards meetings, we as a team, both the public sponsors and the development team, can make a commitment to coming back to you to afford us time to be responsive to these questions and to, as Dara mentioned earlier, provide an update on where they are with the programming and design for the tower.
Yeah.
Strictly
To this. Because we could go on for 3 hours talking just about this.
Yeah. We can certainly see what we can do. I'm looking to find the agenda.
For September?
Yeah.
Even if another.
Because
Well,
there's always
yeah,
other
we
things
could
to
do it.
do. I think we need to schedule this specifically just to this.
Tammy.
So Toby and Marion and the team, the question would be whether the next meeting could be a public hearing in September to allow everyone to be able to ask questions and to get the most amount of maximum information out. Our land use meeting is September 13th, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't run simultaneous to another committee in order to get the information out to the public.
Okay, let me circle back with the team. As I'd mentioned earlier, we're looking at how to best manage the schedule for September. So I've noted that there's a land use committee meeting on the 13th. I've noted the committee's interest in having there be more time for there to be public discussion about the project, and we'll circle back as a team and get back to you on that.
So what we would love, if that was a possibility, is the night of September 23rd. It's a Thursday. It's a night that we normally do our quality of life, which talks about housing. So it would be an ideal situation, and it would give all of our committees an opportunity to be able to really try and attend. It's 2 nights after environmental and other things. So it would be a good time to host that if that works for you.
I've noted both dates, and we'll work with the team on that and get back to you as soon as we can.
Public hearing.
As a public hearing.
Well, we could talk about the format of it, but let's,
The only topic, yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So if that's possible, then that would be great. Please let us know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toby.
Toby, thank you. Dewana, thank
Dewana,
you.
Dara.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Holly. I know it's a
you.
robust dialogue for a small group, but it's a very, very important anchor for Lower Manhattan.
Thank you all for the time. We
Understood.
appreciate you inviting us to tonight's community board meeting. Look forward to continued discussions about the project and hope everyone continues to stay well and stay safe.
Thank you.
Enjoy your August. Okay.